Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. My name is Dave Woodrelli. I am joined by Harman on the heels of the Canucks' best win of the season, a 4-0 shutout victory against the defending Cup champs. Harm, you go back and listen to yesterday's show. The receipts were right there for people. We weren't super confident in the Canucks heading into this game. We thought they were going to have a hell of a time dealing with Florida's heavy forecheck. We strongly disagreed with Eric Brandstrom getting scratched for a second straight game. But in my notes, Harm, I have Mark Friedman looked fantastic, was getting under the opposition's skin. Really liked what I saw from Mark Friedman. Now, I will say I did get a Twitter response. I don't know if you started getting it on Twitter. I think people like to tweet their hate at me more than you. People tweeted me and were like, "Do you want to take back what you said yesterday about it being a mistake not to play Brandstrom?" I will say I'm glad that the bottom four defense group showed up. I also will say that Eric Brandstrom's puck moving could have aided in what they accomplished yesterday. Now, look, some people will say just take the L. I don't do that when I'm not wrong. I don't think I'm wrong here, Harm. I stand by it. I say it's hard now to say Eric Brandstrom should be in the lineup for the next game because they just played like this, but like I stand by it. Eric Brandstrom could have been able to help them yesterday as well.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you there. Credit to Tocchet for nailing that decision last night. But you look at the two games that Brandstrom's been scratched. One of them was an utter disaster, and one of them panned out pretty well. So 1 for 2 there. We'll see how it proceeds. And again, I think as the sample size sort of evolves without him in the lineup, I think he'll work his way back into the picture. I think they'll realize that they need his mobility in the lineup in the bottom four. But overall, what a bounce back performance. And I think it's not even the game in isolation, but also with the context of how poorly they played in front of Thatcher Demko against the St. Louis Blues. I can't imagine that the coaching staff was thrilled with that. And to me, the fact that the group actually responded to a situation where Tocchet and his group was probably harsh on them, that's a really promising sign, especially against an opponent of the Florida Panthers caliber. I think that game really closely resembled the Rick Tocchet DNA and staples of last season. That was my biggest takeaway. The 200-foot play of the forwards especially was impeccable, and I think that's a large reason why the defensemen were able to hold up well, is because I think the forwards are doing a hell of a job in all three zones of helping the defenders out. Just the pressure, the quickness, and the motor to cause havoc on the forecheck. That was a massive part of this team's identity last year. I don't think we've seen that really consistently this season. But man, against Florida, they were hounding the Panthers at every turn, relentless layers of pressure. They were winning 50-50 battles. They were dominating the game along the walls, which is really notable because the Panthers have a lot of heaviness on the wings. And even in the defensive zone, this caught my eye. There were a few situations where Florida player has the puck in the slot in a prime shooting location, and a Vancouver forward collapses in the slot to tie up the stick and deny the chance. And I look at Elias Pettersson, for example. His line got caved territorially, right? Ugly underlying numbers, but I thought in the defensive zone, his work was really strong, really sharp. The passes that he was picking off, just positionally. And I think the forward group as a whole, combined with the defensemen chipping up and stepping up, did a tremendous job of sticking to the staples and foundation that made them so successful last season.
I think one thing that really slipped up, and you just kind of mentioned it there, the guts at the ice, all that sort of stuff. We know all those Tocchet cliches. One thing that really slipped up in my mind against St. Louis was, obviously we know the forecheck wasn't great, but the neutral zone play as well was where they were starting to just lose a lot, and St. Louis was able to get right into the zone, and it just wasn't good enough. I thought the Canucks neutral zone play was really, really good yesterday. That is getting back to the system. And again, we talked about it yesterday, this idea of, okay, well, the fire Tocchet crowd, right? If you're going to fire the coach, it's usually because he's lost the room. That game screams this coach has not lost the room by any stretch of the imagination. And look, I'm not trying to say we were trying to start controversy or anything, but like when your team repeatedly lets you down, you say to the media, like, yeah, we didn't play our game tonight. We didn't do this. We didn't do that. And nothing changes. Like, that's when you start to wonder, like, okay, like, has it fallen on deaf ears now? Like, do they need a new voice? All that stuff. That's what you start to wonder. But like the last night, not only just kind of reaffirmed what we thought we knew about this team and what they were capable of last year, but it also told you that like Tocchet's a really strong voice for this group still. And look, I'm not saying we had doubts about that, but to like the Fire Tocchet crew, this is what I'm trying to say is it's just you have to take what you're given and what you actually see. And what we saw last night was a team listening to their coach and playing for their coach.
That's also the type of game that when coaches are trying to preach the hard work away from the puck as far as back checking and just the unsexy parts of the game that players don't love to necessarily always commit to because it's not as fun as creating offense and scoring goals. I think that's the exact type of game that this coaching staff can in the future show footage of, because it wasn't just that they defended well, but how structured they were gave them opportunities to counterattack off the rush. Right. That was a game where they looked really dangerous in transition. They created some chances off the rush. They created some goals off the rush. And again, it goes in sharp contrast to the St. Louis game where they were loose. They were giving up a ton defensively off the rush. But we were also talking about, well, where is this team's lack of transition offense? Why aren't they creating more with their speed and off the counterattack? And that's the textbook example, the game last night of that cliche of when you defend well, when you are structured, when you force the opposition to make mistakes, that's going to feed into your offensive game as well.
Okay, let's hear from Rick Tocchet. This is clip 1, Jacob. Him talking about how there was a lot to like in their win against the defending Cup champs.
Everybody contributed. Good team identity win. Obviously, a lot of good efforts from a lot of different guys, a lot of different lines. Thought the D were scrappy, and obviously Lanks had a great game. So it's a start in the right direction, for building that team identity.
And then the other one I wanted to hear, just the belief that they're a good team. This is clip 4, Jacob.
Effort. Happy about it. We're even keel team. I know. We have to stay even kill. We got to enjoy it, but put it behind us. Just like when we lose a game, I think we're handling that better. So, like, there's adversity hit this team, and there's been, like I said, good stuff and bad stuff about that happened this year. And I like the fact that we're 7 games over 500. We're okay. We got good players here. We are a good team, and we'll find our game. And tonight's in the right direction. So that's the way I look at it.
That was the Canucks A game. Let's be honest. We've talked all season about how they're picking up wins, soft opponents. They haven't had their A game yet. Like, players were telling us this. This wasn't us just being overly critical. Like, players were saying we haven't found our A game yet, and that was the Canucks A game. Like, that's as good of a Canucks effort you're gonna find. But I will say this, Harm. The thing that made it more impressive for me was not that they scored the first goal on home ice, not the fact that they got a 2-goal lead on home ice, which we've definitely not seen this year. It was the fact that I think through, I want to say about 30 minutes, didn't see much from JT Miller, didn't see much from Elias Pettersson, didn't see much from Brock Boeser, didn't see much even from Quinn Hughes through about the halfway point of the game. Canucks had a 2-0 lead, and then those guys started to show up, and then you had the power play goal as well, and it kind of turned for them. It turned in the right direction, and you did eventually get it from JT Miller, who again was the game's first star, but you didn't really get much from Elias Pettersson. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. You highlighted the solid defensive play, but like even in terms of Quinn Hughes' performances and how fantastic he's been all season long, like didn't think it was spectacular. I thought the rest of the defensive group really stepped up. Now, of course, Quinn was still the best of that bunch, but I just mean a game where Quinn Hughes doesn't take over, a game where JT Miller, Brock Boeser, and Elias Pettersson don't take over. One of those guys doesn't really take over, and you come away with a shutout victory. Like, that's rare. We're going to see very few of those this year, especially on home ice.
This is where I think Tocchet also deserves credit for recognizing the need to strengthen the fourth line. Right, that was the opportunity that with JT Miller coming back, you added another centerman to the group. We were thinking about, before we knew what Tocchet was going to turn to, this idea of maybe you flip Suter to the wing and have him play with Miller and Boeser, because over the last season and a half, he's been the best winger statistically with Miller and Boeser. And maybe you bump or keep Blueger sort of in that third line center role. But I think Tocchet looked at, and this is where, when we were talking about, Höglander's opportunity to play with Miller and Boeser, my initial thought on yesterday's show was, I really think this is Tocchet looking at how inexperienced the fourth line was previously, how they weren't really adding much of an identity, and him not so much wanting to give Höglander an opportunity up the lineup, but looking at the center group and thinking, it'd be great if we can, instead of having Bluger as our 3C, now have him as our 4C and really solidify that fourth line. And that made a world of a difference. It was also, you could tell, Max Sasson's one of his best games of the season. Danton Heinen was productive. That fourth line was really setting the tone for the team's effort on the forecheck. Also say this on Danton Heinen's goal, I don't think Teddy Bluger got enough credit for the way that he handled Derek Forbert's outlet pass. If you look at that replay, Forbert's outlet pass had a little bit too much heat on it, and it was straight into his skates. Bluger, all in one motion, kicked it up to his stick and continued the rush play. That, to me, was a subtle moment that really made that goal happen, even though he didn't get the primary assist on that play. So, hell of a performance from that fourth line, and you hope that they can just continue that momentum now.
I actually didn't notice that kick play. We'll get into that, and we'll get into more later. I want to talk about Max Sasson. I want to really dive in on him, but let's go to our pal, Frank Seravalli, who joins us now from Daily Faceoff. Frank, how you been? It feels like we get to talk to you like once a month, and it's a great time every time you join the show. How you been?
Oh, thanks. Likewise. I really enjoy it. And today on a Friday the 13th, I mean, what better way to start it?
The Phillies off season so far. Any disappointment there for you?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that nothing's happened.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say that's.
Who did they have the trade? They had a trade in place. I just saw it. I can't remember who.
They were
for.
talking about getting.
Was it Tucker? Kyle Tucker?
Yeah, Tucker from Houston.
Sad. Yeah. As I wear my Mariners hat.
Yeah, that's his life.
Anyways, let's talk hockey, Frank.
Yeah.
Let's talk hockey. The Canucks, they get JT Miller back last night. We're not going to obviously get into the reasons he was away and all that sort of stuff, but just to get him back, what does that mean for this team?
I mean, did you hear the spine-tingling chants of JT Miller in the arena? Like, so awesome. And, I know the guys that were at UFC, was it last week?
Survivor Series, yeah.
WWE, they were talking about how they were hearing the JT Miller chants then, which I think is just so special to think about what 2 years ago was like for JT Miller in your town and what now is like, and the support and all of what that means. Look, there's been I do think we should talk for just a second about, there's been so much innuendo out there, right? About how do you arrive at this point? What did this mean? How did we get here? Why? I think all really, some of them are fair questions to ask because people are paying a lot of money and they care and they want to know what's happening with their team. I spent a while looking into this and talking to people about it. And look, there's zero doubt that JT Miller, the heartbeat, the engine of this team, he can run hot at times, but there's everyone that I talked to said there was never an instance or something that happened that was out of character or out of school between any, teammates or coaching staff that led to this. Obviously some frustration built into his game and where things were at, and legitimately arrived at a point where burnout was a thing. And I think to take a step back for a few weeks and sort through some of that, I think in the end is going to be really beneficial, not just for JT Miller, but also for the Canucks. And so to get back last night and for this team to get a little bit closer to the real true build of what Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford tried to put together in the summer, I think is incredibly important for a team that's been up and down and has been at times a little all over the place, but I think is in a really healthy place now.
Frank, how do you think the front office views the Canucks' performance this season so far? Do they view this as a year that they should be aggressively sort of pushing their chips in and going all in? Or do you think they're going to take more of a wait and see approach to see how things play out?
Well, for one, they just wanted to see this group assembled as they actually built them to be, which I was hinting at. the Phil Hronek injury is tough because, that window is now extended out a couple months to the point where you may never get everyone completely healthy at the same time, which is also something to reckon with. I think a few things are true. I think one is that they know they can't do that every year. Two, they think that this team has some deficiencies and some holes, particularly on the back end, and how inefficient they move the puck. And that's just such a core tenet and staple of what Rick Tocchet wants to do and accomplish, and the way that they play, that I think they'd like to try and improve from that standpoint. But also at the same time, recognizing we've got a few things here that we're just not going to, we're not going to dip into our savings, so to speak, in order to make some of those things happen. And that would be the look toward the future. Like, there have been teams at varying points that have said, hey, we'll make a deal with you, but we want Lekaramäki. They're like, no, not non-starter, right? Like, it's not going to happen. So I think things like that, they've got their eye on the now and the future and want to improve without going way overboard.
I'm not sure would necessarily improve them, maybe addition by subtraction, but we've heard Vincent Desharnais' name out there. Like, do you think there could be a taker for Vinny Desharnais? Like, someone in the chat was asking about the bottom penalty killing teams in the league. Do you think there could be any takers for Vinny Desharnais at 2 years, $2 million per year?
Would there be? Yeah. Would someone in the NHL take him if the Canucks were trying to offload him for free? Yeah, I think so. Like, if you put Vinny Desharnais on waivers today, would he pass through? Maybe, maybe not.
I lean toward maybe.
You think what?
I lean toward maybe. Like, I think he probably would.
Okay, so what I'm about to say, you can rewind to like July, whatever. And I said this right after they made the deal to bring him in. What exists now with Vinny Desharnais, he's big, rangy, actually has pretty decent boots for a guy that big, but there are so many puck limitations with him that I don't know that you could, like, I think the Canucks were a little bit headstrong in thinking that they could coach their way out of it.
Yeah.
That they could develop their way out of it. But usually when someone's 27 at that point and has been, up and down and has, improved to the point that they make it to the NHL, a lot of times you just are what you are. And everyone wanted to see through those limitations because of the body and frame that he has, that you can't do that.
Kevin Lankinen had another terrific performance last night. It's interesting, given how much Thatcher Demko has dealt with injuries. I think we all know at this point that even though Demko is ultra talented, that moving forward, this team is going to need a really reliable, solid number two behind him as insurance. How motivated do you think the Canucks will be? How strongly do you think they'll push to try and keep Lankinen? And ultimately, should Canucks fans be worried that Lankinen might price himself out of Vancouver with the season he's having?
I mean, with all due respect to Kevin Lankinen, the concern first and foremost should be the long-term health of Thatcher Demko, and solving for that answer first, which is, how does the rest of this year go? How does the knee feel? And what level of play is Demko at before you can address any of those next things? Then next, it's Lankinen has been great. And he's been, the fact that they saw him as a target and a pickup in a moment of need, and he was willing to play ball because of the opportunity. He was looking for a lot more than what he got. And the Canucks were able to seize on that because of what they could offer him in terms of role. So that's great. But I would say, as good as Lankinen has been, every year there's 20 to 22, 25 goalies that are available every summer that I think, for lack of a better term, are interchangeable parts. Like, look at the summer that we arrived at last year. Anthony Stolarz goes to Toronto. He just got dinged up last night, but he's been in the Vezina Trophy conversation so far to start. 928 save percentage. Crazy. He's on the scrap heap. And then, look at some of the other guys that make it to free agency. There's such an influx of goalies that getting married to one guy because you think he's the right fit, I think you have to base it on price, and you have to base it on value, because look at some other teams and the way that they've approached the goaltending position. The Demko contract has been great, and that's a whole other topic now of what that next deal looks like. But look at Washington and their tandem. Look at the Leafs. Look at Carolina. Look at a lot of teams that are in the playoff mix aren't devoting a ton of resources to it because they've figured out the same thing that I'm talking about, which is you can get a reasonable facsimile for less that allows you to spend more in other areas of your team that make your team better.
Frank, Brock Boeser. We saw the report earlier this week looking for 8 years, $8+ million AAV. The overwhelming reaction among Canucks fans was, oh, that's too much. We know that this management regime will play hardball and they'll do what they need to do. We know that. But like, do you look at that and just say that's just a player and an agent looking for a number? It's not going to actually come in that high. Like, where do you kind of project that Brock Boeser is going to land if he signs with the Canucks?
Well, the first thing I thought of was he makes 665 now. So getting to 8 is really not a significant raise. And he got to that point based on the production that he had before that, which was someone who was kind of averaging like over an 82 game pace, like somewhere between 26 and 29. Like I'm in that ballpark. And if you get to that number at 665 with that, you touched 40 last year. He scored last night. So
he's on a good pace this year. He's on a really good pace.
He's like 29 and a half. If I'm not like, I think I checked the math yesterday. He's on pace for just about 30, somewhere between 29 and 30.
Yep.
That's above his career average. It's not last year's pace, but it's still enough to get you paid. Like 30 goal scorers in the NHL get paid. Like they just do. And not only that, but now we're entering a new phase of the cap that's actually increasing. So the 665, it actually kind of just translates over into 8, and it's not really a significant raise. The bigger question for me would be term. For a player that plays the way Brock Boeser does in his skill set, is he going to slow down? Is he going to be a guy that you have to worry about in years 5, 6, 7, 8 of the deal? That I think is the way more pertinent question than the 8 million. And I'm not saying he will. I'm just asking. That's the question you have to ask, right?
And I think it's a split decision on Canucks fans when you ask that question. Like that's the number one thing we saw in the Canucks Army comment section was like, we call him the flow out here in Vancouver. A lot of people start calling him the slow during those bad years where he was just like, again, looked like he was skating in quicksand. He's just developed his game in a way that's, it would suggest that those later years won't be an issue for him. And Harman, actually, I'm curious to get your thoughts on that question. Like, to me, like I look at Brock Boeser and say he's developed his game enough in a way that, yeah, okay, maybe you look at 8 million, you get some sticker shock, but you also think about what $8 million is going to look like for a guy that, let's say later on he's scoring closer to 20 to 30 goals. Looking at that with the cap going up, like I look at that and say, like, this is probably an okay deal to think about.
Okay, so let's look at our chat. K-Town Chef says, I'd rather give Brock $9 million for 5 years than 8 times 8. Okay. But what would be Brock's incentive to take 9 years times 5 when he could probably go to market and get someone to give him 7 times 8?
Yeah. Yeah. Harm?
No, I'm sort of with Frank there, where to me it's not so much the AAV. I think 8 million AAV is totally fair for what Boeser is right now. It's the term, and I think the Canucks are caught in a position where the window that they have to win is, or the best window is this current timeline with Hughes remaining 3 years of his contract at under 8 million. That's your best shot at contending for a Stanley Cup. And I don't think you can look at that contract and say, you don't want to sign it, that you think it'll age poorly long-term. But then the question becomes, how are you going to replace Brock Boeser? I don't think they have a Boeser replacement internally. I don't think Lecker-Mackey is going to immediately be the answer. And I don't think it's just easy to find 30 goal scorers on the free agent and trade market. So I think two things are true there. The contract that he is going to be able to fetch probably won't age well long-term, but also he's probably too irreplaceable to this team, given that this team's window to win is right now, that they'll probably have to concede and sign a deal to keep him.
Frank, reading into Patrick Levine's preseason comments that they would need to make a decision on Boeser before the deadline. What do you make of that? Like, clearly the suggestion is if we
Why?
can't sign him, we're going to trade him. Like, that's, to me, that's what I read into it.
I'm nonplussed. Like, I guess I'm like, I could be swayed either way on that argument. Like,
Fair.
if all those things that we just talked about are actually true, and this is another window for you to win, why would Boeser be any different than allowing Zadorov and Lindholm to walk?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're going to acquire guys to use them for one playoff run to then have them walk, why would you need to bring in something for Boeser to make your team worse in the short term when he walks anyway? Like, would you like? Here's my big issue, and I say this full well knowing that I'm a, by job, by role, trade deadline, like, you want as many players to talk about as possible. That said, I don't understand why NHL teams get so twisted on fulfilling a contract and then at the end of it, shaking hands and walking. That's the whole point of the deal, is that you signed up to play all 3 years of this 3-year deal, and you did all 3 years of this 3-year deal. You bought as a drafted homegrown player. You bought and used all of the best years that Brock Boeser is going to have. I'm not saying he can't be a good player in his late 20s, early 30s, but you bought the prime. You owned it. You paid for it. And then you shake hands and you say, congratulations, you're off to the next destination. I'm not saying that's what should happen. I'm just saying it's okay if that does, because you're forgetting about the opportunity cost of then plugging in $8 million. What if you go spend that on something else? What if you go spend that on a forward and a defenseman? $6 million on a defenseman, $2 million on a forward. I don't know. I'm just however you want to chop it up. You have to realize that there's an ability to go out and replace that people forget because they're so scared of losing.
Frank, are you worried about the trade deadline at all? Just from a content perspective, like it feels like there's not many clear sellers, clear buyers. Like, what do you, in all seriousness, like, what do you actually think we're
never?
Going to
I'm never worried about it, because you know what? It is what it is. At the end of the day, I don't make the news or make it up. I just report on what's there, and whatever that's there, then that's what it will be.
All right, Frank, appreciate you taking the time today. We will close it out with you there, but yeah, much appreciated. And yeah, we will chat with you soon.
Good to see you guys. Be well. Have a good
weekend.
He
is. Yep. Have a good weekend. There he is. Frank Seravalli of Daily Faceoff. Some really interesting stuff, Harm. Really interesting stuff. And the chat is buzzing. We'll get to anyone else in a second here. Can I quickly just shout out Max Sasson? I really want to talk about him. Thought he was so good last night. The first goal, the Susi goal, his little stop up and cut into the middle was phenomenal. It was something that you just don't see young players do often. Hell, it's something you just don't see bottom 6 forwards in the NHL do very often. But to have his head up like that and cut into the middle of the ice, find Susi streaking down, like, you could tell that the Florida defense just wasn't expecting him to do that. And I thought that was a really nice play to see from a young guy who's, again, trying to find his footing in the NHL. But, he gets a little pick from Teddy Bluger as well. There's some hockey IQ behind that play. And I think that was a really good thing to see from Max Sasson last night.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what he can do now that he's the only rookie/inexperienced player on that line, right? Now that he has a couple of veterans to lean on, it should help steady his game, because you look at his play so far, I think he came out of the gate first 2-3 games and was really, really good. I think he went quiet more recently up until his performance last night. Overall, 4 assists in 9 games. That's great production from a fourth liner. But as far as the underlying numbers, I think that fourth line before Bluger joined them was struggling to make a consistent impact. So now that you have Bluger there with them, I'm excited to see what Sasson can do now that he doesn't have to do as much.
Okay, I got a couple nugs for you. A couple nugs on Jake DeBrusk I want to talk about. He's up to 14 goals, leads the team in goals. He's now on pace for 41 goals. He leads all free agent signings in goals scored this season. Of anybody who signed a contract this past offseason, hello, we have Jake Gensel at home. And finally, since November 1st, Mikko Rantanen is the only player that has more goals scored in the league than Jake DeBrusk. Now, I'm working on this for Canucks Army. I don't want to give away too much, but it's downright impressive what he's doing, but it's also pretty predictable. Like, we've seen him go on scoring streaks like this in Boston. I think the thing that is standing out to me is that I don't know if we can call this a normal Jake DeBrusk streak, and I got to dive into it more. But usually his scoring streaks and his kind of his streakiness, like, we know he's a streaky guy. Usually it doesn't last as long as it's gone. Harman, he has not gone more than a game without scoring a goal since November 19th against the Rangers, and that was the last game that he didn't score a goal, other than the one against Tampa and the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins as well. But he has scored a goal in every other game since then. Like, he has not gone more than 2 games without, or excuse me, he has not gone 2 games without scoring a goal since mid-November.
He's been outstanding. I think there was a stretch of games I was looking at before the Florida one. I think the team's previous 10, where I was looking at every Canuck forward, how many high danger chances they'd created. And I think DeBrusk was number 1 with 27, and the next best Canuck was like Elias Pettersson at 9. It was a massive disparity. He's just been a net front machine, which is interesting because he's got great speed, but he's been more dangerous because of what he does in front of the net. The tips, the rebounds, the ability to get open around the blue paint, how he anticipates, how he wins inside body position. All of these subtle details and habits have been really impressive. And in overall, it's been a terrific campaign for him. But I'm also, you've mentioned that, okay, this streak is longer than the ones that he's had in the past. And I think overall, there are reasons to believe that his ceiling is higher than what he showed in Boston, because he never had the consistent opportunity to play with a centerman of Elias Pettersson's caliber in Boston. However, I'm also trying not to get too carried away with the highs of this hot streak, because
don't tell me about
DeBrusk has historically. No, I'm not talking about shooting percentage. It's like he has been streaky. Like, he's the first one to admit it. I had this conversation with him on the road in California, by the way, which was right before he went on this heater, right? He scored 1 goal, and then I had this interview with him, and I asked him, like, do you think this is the start of a heater? And he's like, yeah, I hope so. I think I've been a streaky guy. I don't think he shies away or takes it personally that he's been labeled a streaky scorer in the past. That's just kind of that just kind of is who he is. The point I'm trying to make is this has been terrific overall, excellent signing. I expect it to be I expect it to continue that way overall. But I'm also trying not to read too much into this great hot streak and think, oh, he's going to be a consistent 35, 40 goal scorer for the duration of the contract either.
Sure. Fair enough. I did some preliminary research on the piece, but the final nug on Jake DeBrusk I want to say, from what I could see, and maybe I'll have to fact check this, it'll be in the article if I actually get around to writing it, but this is the most goals he's ever scored in a 10-game span in his career ever. Like, in his entire career, this is the highest number of goals he scored in a 10-game span. So Jake DeBrusk, you're getting a lot from him right now. And hold on, let's count this: 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 goals in 10 games for Jake DeBrusk. It's the most he's ever scored in a 10-goal stretch. So I think I'm gonna have to keep researching that, but it's preliminary research. But the point is, Jake DeBrusk's production right now is just downright impressive, and I think he deserves some flowers. So let's give him those flowers, and let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by our friends over at Greta, a great spot for all games home and away. We were there for the first viewing party of the season on October 19th, and we'll be there for another one coming up shortly, along with a few more throughout the year. So stay tuned for details on that. But even if we're not there, you certainly should be. Just minutes from the arena, come by before and after the game or whatever event you're downtown for. With arcade games, weekly drink specials, and the recently updated street food menu, Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin.
Okay, first of all, before we get into the listener questions, I just want to point out, so yesterday you obviously put your proverbial money where your mouth is and picked the Flames to beat Tampa for your Bet365 bet of the day.
What are we doing?
At 6:17, I get a text from Quads in our WhatsApp. Hubert will go, baby, 1-0 Flames. And I didn't say anything because I was like, it's 5 minutes in.
Calgary Flames, hockey team.
And so I was like, you know what? Let him take his early victory lap. I bet Tampa's gonna kick their boots into it. Now, I was busy, obviously, watching the Canucks game. I checked the score later, and I see Nikita Kucherov's 6-point night, 8-3 final victory.
Franchise record. He sets a franchise record for points in a game when I bet against him.
And then that's when more than 2 hours later, I responded. And then what happened? Nikita Kucherov 6-point night, dead face emoji.
Oh man, yeah, no,
over.
Not a good
your
night.
Team's cooked.
Well, listen, let me give some context for that, because you see 8-3 and you think it was a bad game. It was, but there were some good things. They started that game nice. Jacob, pull up Nazem Kadri's goal. Did you see this goal?
What?
Why would you expect me to have that?
This is giving.
It was not good. It was not good.
Chris Paul hits a huge 3 to cut the deficit to 31.
It was not a great game for the Sea of Red. But you know what? Like, we never give up. You know, we were down 4-1 and they made it close. It was 4-3 and then Tampa took over. So not the best game, but yeah, okay. Not the best game. You can put it as an L. I'll just wear that one.
Calgary's only on pace for 90 points now. That's not going to be enough to make the playoffs. It's over.
Long season, Harm. Season's not over on December 13th.
You're right. There's enough time for their point pace to slip to like 80.
DM Payne said quad saying things twice should have been a bingo space. I didn't know I do that often. People are pointing it out now. We'll see. Yeah. Nick Pochek said that you were for sure going to be chasing down my victory lap. I knew we were going to open anyone else with this. I was hoping, like, it's not in my show notes to talk about the Flames loss.
Yeah, so. Wonder why.
Kind of caught me off guard a bit.
And Harm, I had that graphic like lined up and ready. Quads didn't ask for it, so you and I were on the same wavelength there. We knew what was up.
Oh man. Okay.
We can move to the Canucks talk now.
We can move to the Canucks. Can we? I wore the L. Are we all happy that I wore the L?
Yes.
First time that's ever happened. Hayden Gilderson in the chat said this: Hughes, Hronek, Brandstrom, Myers, Susie, Juleson. Thoughts on that being the top 6 that if they don't make any reactionary trades? So that's what he's saying. If they don't make any trades until about the trade deadline. I struggle with the Brandstrom Myers pairing. Like, I just don't think you're going to get that. I also I'm a big franchise guy. You haven't seen enough from Eric Brandstrom to say, yeah, of course he can play in the top 4. Look, if you showed me this a month or like a week or two ago and everybody was playing like garbage, yeah, maybe I'd say, yeah, it can't be worse than what they have now. But like, Brandstrom didn't elevate during that time. And I need to see more from Eric Brandstrom before I look at this and say, oh yeah, there you go. There's your top 6. Like, you're set.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you. I don't think you can use him in a top 4 role at all. I really do like the idea of having Forbert and Brandstrom on his offside together as a third pair, because Forbert, we know that he's got the defensive range, he's got the PK ability, struggles to move the puck at times. That's where I think Brandstrom can help him. And I know Mark Friedman had a great night last night, and he'll continue to get the run in that spot for a little bit. But long term, I think Brandstrom would be a pretty attractive option to play with Forbert on the third pair. And then the options aren't great, because then you're potentially looking at reuniting Susie and Myers. We'll see. There's still a lot of runway before Hronek returns, and we look at what's the optimal bottom 4 combination.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. There's still really, what this tells me, like, can I be honest with you? Like, when I look at this defense group, I'm just like, holy cow, they need Rasmus Andersson. Like, that's the biggest thing it tells me.
Yeah.
We're bringing the conversation back to the Flames a bit. Someone in the chat, where'd it go? Where did it go? Darn. Oh yeah, there, Karn in the chat. We need Calgary to start pooping the bed so they are more willing to trade Rasmus Andersson. There you go, Harm. So look, either way, whatever happens, we're cheering for the Flames. We're either cheering for them to lose because you want Rasmus Andersson, or if you're like me, you're cheering for them to win because actually, I don't know why I want the Flames to win so bad. How did this bid even start? How did this start?
We bet on whether they would. Right. Yeah, wow, you're already forgetting about this bet.
Just keeping you on your toes. Making sure you're remembering.
Harm, what kind of pirate pack are you getting at the end of this? And
we muted Harm. Nice. I swear that wasn't me. I promise to everybody watching this. I swear I'm not the reason that Harman's mic just muted itself. That's really funny timing though, that you asked him to basically dunk on me and then his mic just mutes. Maybe that's karma. And Harman can't unmute his mic. This is hilarious. Oh, he got it.
No, I was gonna say I got plenty of time to decide. Meanwhile, Quads before the first half of December is even over is looking to jump ship on wagon flames.
All right. Everybody just settle down. Harm, this one was from Travis Wall. I kind of alluded to it during the interview with Frank. Vinny Desharnais. We saw the initial report from Dollywall yesterday. Then we saw something from Elliot Friedman today in 32 Thoughts. And the question, and for those that missed it, Canucks are shopping Vincent Desharnais. Friedman reporting that they're trying to find a better fit for the player. And as we all know, it has not worked out the way that the Canucks thought it would when they signed him to a 2-year deal at $2 million average. So I wonder this was from Travis Wall. He was asking about the bad penalty killing teams in the league. And he said, like, would they value them? And look, maybe we're a little bit biased because of how much it hasn't worked out for Vincent Desharnais in Vancouver. But like when Frank brought it up, I said, yeah, of course he'd pass through waivers. Like, who is taking that at $2 million? In my mind, you were looking at, you're probably going to have to attach something to make someone take him off your hands. Do you think I'm off on that? Like maybe there is a team that values him that much and his penalty killing, but I just don't know if there's someone out there that values him to that extent.
It's hard to say because at $2 million for a seventh defenseman at this point, that's an overpayment. That's not a good contract. If he was at 1.5, it'd be no brainer. I think somebody will bite on him. Now at $2 million, there might still be a team out there. And we've talked about this. Is there a greater fool out there that looks at his size and thinks this is a project defenseman that we can fix? Maybe. And look, I'll say this management regime has done a pretty good job of getting out of contracts that don't look very good, right? The Anthony Beauvillier contract, how they got out of that, the $3 million, given how poorly Beauvillier was playing at the start of last season, dumping him to Chicago was surprising. The fact that it didn't cost them a ton to get rid of Ilya Mikheyev, and Mikheyev's contract was much worse than Desharnais. It gives me some level of confidence that they'll figure a way out. We'll see. See, conversations like this are hard because you're trying to predict what 31 other teams, how all of them view Desharnais. All it takes is one, right? We can objectively look at that Desharnais contract and go, man, that's going to be a hard deal to move. And logically, I agree with that. But you got 31 other teams. And again, all it takes is one to see the upside, see the size, and roll the dice on him. So put it this way, even if it does cost a sweetener, I really don't think it would cost a lot. And if they are motivated to get off the contract before the deadline, I think they'll be able to do it.
Some breaking news. Sawyer Minio has made Team Canada's World Junior team. We weren't expecting that. He got the invite. Even Dave Hall, who loves him some Sawyer Minio, was saying that I don't think Dave used the word long shot, but we were talking about a potential cut. It looks like he's made the team. Dave tweeted that out on just a few minutes ago. We had it's breaking news. Hockey Canada put out their roster, and Sawyer Minio is on it. Sawyer Minio has made the team, and so has Bo Akey. Okay, that's a good name. Sawyer Minio makes Team Canada's World Junior team. There's some instant reaction here, Harm. People in the chat reacting to it too, saying steal of a pick.
Yeah, he's developed really well. In his draft year, he played on a really deep Seattle Thunderbirds team. So role-wise, point production-wise, maybe flew a little bit under the radar. That's I think part of what made him a sort of later third-round pick, being available that deep. And there were a number of defensemen from Seattle that graduated the season after. And so in his D+1, that's why Minio broke out and had the 16 goals, had the 53 points in 63 games. Now, just because a defenseman scores a lot of points in junior, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily this offensive style defenseman. That's certainly not Mignot. He starts with his defensive play, his competitiveness, how hard he is sort of excelling in a shutdown role. And I'll also point to like Jet Wu, for example, as another defenseman who had a massive explosion in point production, either in his draft +1 or draft +2 season. And yet, obviously, it didn't mean that, okay, this guy's an offensive dynamo. But yeah, I mean, Mignot's developed really well. His competitiveness, even just in training camp, watching him, the way that he was able to get under guys' skin, there's something there with the motor that he has, with the defensive IQ that he has. And I'm excited to see how he performs at this tournament.
Zane Perrick didn't make the team. He apparently got he didn't get the initial invite. Then they brought him in a day later, played with Mignot during the scrimmages. That was his D partner in the earlier tournaments that they did as well. And Zane Perrick is the one that gets cut, it looks like. And there's obviously other cuts that I don't know, but Sawyer Mignot makes the team. Like, this is really nice for his resume. Named captain of the Seattle Thunderbirds. He's point per game player. Like, yeah, and I mean, someone else in the chat pointed out too, we were pumping his tires in the preseason and training camp. Like, we talked about him as a guy that we noticed. I talked about him getting into a skirmish with Danila Klimovich and getting under Klimovich's skin. Not super hard to do, but he did it at camp, and we liked what we saw from Mignot, and I think he was also one of the guys that Tocchet kind of talked about, is saying, like, yeah, kind of liked what we saw from him. They moved him up to that Group B, if memory serves correctly, so good news for Canucks fans. Good news for Sawyer Mignot. Dave Hall is going to have more on that Canucks Army right now. He's writing it. So CanucksArmy.com. That's the place to check it out. Dave will have more on this Sawyer Mignot being named to Team Canada. Okay, Harm, did you have anything else that you wanted to say before we head into the weekend?
Nope.
Okay, let's quickly just take a look at the Canucks weekend schedule. I just want to highlight Zadorov, Lindholm. It's the big thing. Bruins are in tomorrow. If the Canucks can beat the Panthers, they can beat anyone. So I think that's the new benchmark that they've set for themselves, this idea that they can't beat good teams. If they can beat the Panthers, they can beat anyone. They can certainly beat the Boston Bruins. Bruins, Canucks, 7 o'clock tomorrow. I'm like, what are you expecting from the Boston Bruins?
They've been interesting to kind of track since Joe Sacco took over, since the coaching change. Their overall record looks pretty good in that span, but their schedule is really soft. And they recently got shellacked 8-1 by the Winnipeg Jets. So even though they've gotten that, new coach bump, yeah, like they also last night got destroyed 5-1 by the Kraken. So they're still vulnerable. Looking at the teams that they beat,
Montreal, Detroit, Chicago,
yeah,
Philly.
like they were feasting on soft opponents. And again, what stands out to me is just their lack of offensive generation, especially against top opponents. They couldn't score a goal against the Canucks last time as well. That's going to be the edge that the Canucks should theoretically have, is the Bruins struggle to create offense. Now, it could turn into a low event muckfest, especially one where, okay, if they do get good goaltending, which Jeremy Swayman has been really inconsistent this season, but if he is playing on Saturday night, then there is always that possibility. But on paper, the Canucks should have a clear advantage.
Okay, Jacob's working on pulling up the bingo board, the bingo sheet, because it's Friday. So did we get a bingo this week is the question. Jacob's going to look that up. Harm, as we wait for Jacob to get that, Dr. Haas asked this in the chat, regular listener of the show. He said, are there going to be cheers or boos for Zadorov on Saturday? Can I give you a prediction?
Yeah, go for it.
Team day off today for the Canucks. So, no one's really at the rink. Tomorrow, Bruins are going to do morning skate. Vancouver media are going to go to Zadorov, right? Even if it's not Vancouver media, Boston media, it doesn't matter. Zadorov's going to hold court in the morning. He is going to say something tomorrow morning that is going to make headlines, and it is going to rock the boat. I don't know what it's going to be about. I don't know who it's going to be about. But if Bet365 had odds for Nikita Zadorov to stir the pot tomorrow before the game, hasn't really got the chance to yet, I'm taking the over on that for sure. If it's over 1.5, probably still taking the over. Like, yeah, Nikita Zadorov's going to say something tomorrow. I think so. And I think that'll get him booed.
Good take. I could see that. very
also
feasible.
think he's really well liked still in the market, and I think as it stands he'll get cheers, but maybe he'll wait for his second visit. To
Well,
throw a barb out
also,
there.
we'll see. He could always Daclius Pedersen with an open ice hit, and all of a sudden those cheers start changing, right? Like, you don't think Zurov's going to be motivated to have a monster performance in his return, and that he's not going to be chasing hits and wanting to be big, mean, physical?
He might. KP in the chat said Z playing against us will be a non-factor, just like he was last game. Not been a great first season in Boston for Nikita Zadorov. Okay, let's get to Convo bingo here. Okay, Quads refuses to take an L. Definitely got that. I don't think we talked to Quinn Hughes for Hart. Definitely said Wagon Flames. Didn't talk about a DIY project. Didn't do that. Definitely said we're off the rails. I don't think I struggled with numbers. You know what? We're doing pretty good this week. I don't think I said very much. Yeah, I think we did pretty good. Definitely did a Quads versus Jacob. Nobody choked on Family Feud. Well, no, I'm not counting that as a choke.
No, it wasn't a choke. It was, you guys
No.
lost by 2 points. It was a good
Yeah.
performance.
Okay. Quads versus the chat probably happened. Harm shuts down one of Quads hot takes. Definitely happened. Pull that up. Jacob happened. Quads vibes take happened. We're close here. Wild hypothetical. Yep, I probably did that. And we did Rasmus Anderson with the Canucks. There it is. Bottom row. We did all of those things this week. We got a bingo in the first week of this. We did.
Why are we tracking this?
What do you mean?
Like, shouldn't it somebody else should be tracking this? And it should, if we're cognizantly aware of this, I feel like you're going to game the system to get bingos, and that defeats the whole point.
Well, I don't want to get bingo is the thing. Like, that's the thing, is this is all natural. This is all happening naturally. I've not been thinking about, oh, I need to say this because we need a bingo. This is all just stuff that gets said every week.
You know what? I think we need. I believe it was Oriel C was the person who did this for you on Twitter. We just need like a couple other variations of the board, right? You need, like every bingo card's a little different. So that, depending on what happens, you get it in different locations. We need like a couple different combinations, and then that way we'll just pick a bingo card at random at the end of the week and then see which one actually happened.
Corey McKay in the chat. McQuay, sorry. Said Harm hates fun. K-Town Chef said stop being such a downer, Harm. And Karn said Harm, we are too lazy to track it for y'all. Nick Pochek said Harm spoils fun, should be a space on the board. KP said Harm is the Joker to Quads, just throwing shots and aces of spades. Chat did not like you pooping on the bingo card, Harm.
Well, the bingo card's fun, but it's just, I feel like, first of all, how are we going to be objectively remember everything we said last week? Number two, I feel like the more that we're aware of it, the more that it's going to be in our head.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It makes
Dr.
it less
Haas,
natural.
Harm the party pooper.
I disagree. I just want it to be as natural and organic as possible.
You are catching serious strays from the chat for saying that. That's funny. That's really funny. Yeah, we need some new. We need to update the bingo card as well. So Ariel, if you're listening to this, that'd be great if you could do that. But if you can't, Jacob can also do it, right? Paul Papadoulis said, need one for JPAT saying this hockey club on the bingo card. JPAT does say that a lot. That's a good one. Yeah, this is good. This is great. Okay. Anything else that you want to say before we get to Bet365, Harm?
I'm just so disappointed that the chat would turn on me. That's all that's all I can say.
You're not gonna have a good weekend anymore. Okay.
Broken.
Electric NHL slate for tonight. Actually, no, it's not. We're going to take a weekend game. It's just Ottawa, Carolina. I was being sarcastic. I don't want to bet on that game.
Irf was so disappointed on Rinkwide last night when he had to bet on the Ottawa, Carolina game for tonight. He's like, there's literally nothing here. He started just listing off players that if he was going to do a shots on goal, like prop parlay, which he's so like,
funny.
That's the only chance you've got for this one. So yes, please avoid that game. I don't think anybody really cares about it.
I can't even take the Flames because they're plus 160 against the Panthers, and the Panthers weren't happy about what happened last night. Like, the Panthers are probably going to stomp the Flames tomorrow. It's going to be ugly. I'm not going to watch that game. That's going to break my heart. Meanwhile, the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to be riding high. They're going to be thinking, oh man, we're the best. We're great. After what happened last night, they got a day off in Seattle. They're going to absolutely just choke tomorrow. Seattle are slight underdogs at home against the Lightning. I'm taking the Seattle Kraken. No, I'm not. I don't like that. I don't think I like that. No. Take it back. I take it all back. I don't know. I got to find one I like here. Oh, here's one. Okay, here it is. This is the one. I apologize. Vegas Golden Knights are visiting the Edmonton Oilers. They are underdogs at plus 135. I like that. I bet on those underdogs. Give me the Vegas Golden Knights over the Edmonton Oilers. You can get that at Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. Must be 19 plus play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. Okay, I think we will close it out there. Go Vegas, and we'll see how I did on Monday. We'll see how the Canucks did. We'll see how I did. But we will close it out there for my co-host Harman, our technical producer Jacob Lazar. My name is David Woodrelli. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.